In 1941, the British Army created a military unit that wasn't real. No training camps, no battle record, no soldiers anyone could point to. It existed only on paper. The name was designed to confuse the enemy, nothing more. But within 2 years, that fictional unit would become one of the most feared forces in World War II. The unit so effective that the Germans placed bounties on its members. A unit whose soldiers knew capture meant execution, yet kept going anyway. This is the untold story of how a joke became deadly, and how modern special forces were born in the silence of the desert. By 1941, the war in North Africa wasn't going well for Britain. The desert stretched endlessly, flat, exposed, unforgiving. German and Italian forces moved quickly. British convoys were predictable. Airfields were well defended. Traditional warfare was failing. Large formations were easy to spot. Heavy equipment broke down. Attacks took weeks to plan and failed in minutes. British commanders needed something new, something unpredictable. So they turned to deception. Reports were leaked. Fake insignia appeared. Radio traffic hinted at elite airborne units operating behind enemy lines. The name given to this imaginary force was deliberately impressive: the Special Air Service. The irony was simple. There was no Special Air Service. Not yet. David Stirling didn't fit the mold of a traditional officer. He was tall, reckless, often insubordinate. During training, he broke his back in a parachute accident, an injury that should have ended his career. Instead, it gave him time to think. While others trained for textbook battles, Stirling obsessed over a different idea. What if war didn't require armies? What if small teams could do more damage than battalions? He believed the desert wasn't a weakness, it was an opportunity. Wide open spaces meant surprise mattered more than numbers. His proposal was simple and outrageous. Tiny groups of men, operating deep behind enemy lines, attacking airfields at night, destroying aircraft on the ground. No prolonged fights, no holding territory. Strike, vanish, repeat. Most commanders dismissed him immediately. But desperation has a way of lowering standards, and eventually Stirling found someone willing to listen. The men who joined Stirling weren't polished soldiers. Many were considered troublemakers, rule breakers, men who didn't fit anywhere else. That was the point. They trained differently, moved differently, thought differently. There were no parades, no strict formations. Instead, they learned how to survive with almost nothing, how to navigate by stars, how to disappear into darkness. They wore no standardized uniforms, no insignia that mattered. Officially, they still didn't exist. And then came their first mission. November 1941. The plan was bold. Parachute behind enemy lines, land near Axis airfields, sabotage aircraft before dawn. But the desert doesn't forgive mistakes. A violent storm scattered the jump. Men landed miles apart. Some drowned in flooded ravines. Others were captured almost immediately. The mission was a disaster. Nearly half the unit was lost, killed or taken prisoner without achieving its objective. To many commanders, this was proof the idea had failed. The SAS should have ended right there. But Stirling refused to accept it. He didn't blame the concept, he blamed the method. And that decision changed everything. Stirling abandoned parachute insertions. Instead, he partnered with the long-range desert group, masters of deep desert travel. They moved by jeep,
At night, without lights, the desert became their shield. They drove hundreds of miles behind enemy lines, navigating by instinct and stars. Their targets were precise: airfields, fuel depots, aircraft parked wing to wing, where planes were defenseless. And when they struck fast. SAS attacks didn't look like battles. They were over in minutes. Men slipped through wire fences, planted explosives, disappeared before alarms finished ringing. Aircraft burned silently in the night. Entire airfields were crippled before anyone knew what was happening. Pilots woke to ruins. Runways were useless. Planes destroyed without ever taking off. And the most terrifying part? The attackers were gone. No bodies, no tracks, no explanation. Rumors spread through Axis ranks. The British had commandos everywhere. They struck without warning, and they never stayed. The lie that created the SAS was becoming reality. Success brought attention, and attention brought consequences. German command issued special orders. Captured SAS troops were to be executed. Bounties were offered. Posters circulated. SAS soldiers knew the truth. If captured, there would be no prison camp, no exchange, no survival. Yet operations continued. Raids became bolder, targets more dangerous. Every mission carried the unspoken understanding that survival depended on speed and silence. Fear didn't stop them. It sharpened them.
By 1943, the SAS was no longer a secret. Their methods spread. They operated in Italy, then occupied Europe, then deep behind enemy lines before D-Day. They trained resistance fighters, sabotaged railways, eliminated supply lines. The concept was proven. Small units could change wars. Precision mattered more than size. Surprise was a weapon. After the war, armies across the world copied the model. Special Forces units were no longer experiments. They were essential. The SAS began as a deception, a name created to fool the enemy. It survived disaster, adapted through failure, and thrived because it refused to fight like everyone else. It proved that warfare didn't belong only to armies. It belonged to those willing to think differently and act faster. And that's why the most dangerous soldiers don't announce themselves. They don't march, they don't boast. They appear briefly, change everything, and vanish into history. Because sometimes the deadliest force in war begins as a joke until someone dares to make